Hi guys, welcome to Comics and Chill. Today we're looking at the Spectacular Spider-Man issue 1, volume 2. This issue was released in 2003 and it is drawn by one of my first comic artist loves, Humberto Ramos. And prior to this, the only experience I had with Spider-Man was the 90s animated series and then later the Sam Raimi, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man film. And after that first film came out, I just had to have more Spider-Man. I always knew he was a comic character, but I didn't have access to the comics. I grew up in a small town in the UK, and the American direct market comics were just not readily available. But as I said, I recorded every episode of the animated series. I wore those VHS tapes out, watching them over and over. And I watched the Tobey Maguire film, I think 3 times in the cinema. And I had some comics prior to this. In the UK, they would sort of repackage some American comics. But this issue, or I should say this artist, Humberto Ramos, is what made me want to seek out more and more of these, of the current American comics at the time. I saw this image that we're looking at right now, the cover, and I loved Venom from the animated series. But seeing Ramos's take on him, he's 10 feet tall. He's as big as the Hulk. His tongue's always out. He's got a million teeth pointing out at all sorts of different angles. And he's treating the spider emblem on his chest and back as this bone-like material. It was just, just felt so new and fresh at the time after watching those kind of, more simplistic designs in the animated series. Also, his treatment of Spider-Man, very dynamic, exaggerating his limbs and, proportions, and really sort of contorting his body into, more spider-like poses. Todd McFarlane had done that much before, but this was the first time I was experiencing that. So, let's dig in. So the story opens up with a woman walking home alone through a dark alley, speaking with her mother on the phone, when all of a sudden she hears something and she is attacked. And it's pretty clear from the cues we're being given here that whatever's attacking her is symbiote-based. They establish Peter Parker's new equilibrium. He's moved into a new apartment building. He's got a lot of new supporting cast members. As here you can see that I always thought that Ramos, I just assumed he was influenced by manga and anime. And I believe Wizard Magazine labelled him the same too, but when he was approached about it, it actually came out that he was more influenced by another artist called Arthur Adams, who was influenced by manga and anime, and I guess Ramos was taking those elements from Adams' work and applying them to his own. Here again you can see, this profile of Peter Parker. I loved this as a kid. I remember this drawing specifically because I couldn't draw humans very well, and I couldn't draw them realistically. And I'm looking at Ramos here, and neither is he. And it's not a slight towards him. You can see, he has this very sort of angular, almost graffiti-like style as well. I used to think of graffiti a lot when I'd look at his stuff back then. But, his brow is coming to a point, his nose is coming to a sharp point, chin to a point. And there were a few other artists at the time that I was really into who I felt were trying to, emulate this style of Ramos's at the time. Scotty Young being one of them. I know his style looks very different now, but if you look at a series he did back then called The Human Torch, he was going for something very similar. And another artist who was on a Venom series at the time had a great take on Venom called Francisco Herrera. And here we're seeing Eddie Brock for the first time. He's in a confessional booth asking for forgiveness. He's not looking how we're used to seeing him. His hair's gone, he's looking quite sickly, and he's asking for forgiveness for the demon on his back, which we all know is the Venom symbiote. So there's quite a lot of setup in this first issue, establishing what Peter's life is like at the moment. His friend Flash Thompson is in a coma from an attack by the Green Goblin in a previous storyline, and Peter feels, guilty for that. And also we've got this Commissioner Gordon type investigating the attack on the young woman from the first scene, and we discover that whoever is doing these attacks is puncturing the adrenal glands and sucking them dry. It's like a vampire. After all the setup's done, we get into what Ramos does best, which is drawing Spider-Man. And Peter's here swinging, trying to clear his head, because, you know, that's he being Spider-Man is more normal to him than being Peter Parker and dealing with all these issues that he's got going on in his life right now. But this shot is incredible. Double page spread. Amazing detail in the backgrounds. Nailed the perspective. And yeah, the colouring on it's super slick. It's just amazing. And the action of the issue sort of kicks off here. It's a great pose on Spidey there. Of course, you know, every muscle is coming to a point. Triceps to a point, biceps to a point. And I loved it at the time. Spider-Man hears a scream from the tunnel down below, swings down to see what's going on. And here we see the symbiote is the one attacking these people. And look at that, that's incredible. And a fight ensues. Spider-Man saves this homeless man, and he tries to save himself, but he is losing. And here we can see that the symbiote actually blames him for bringing him to this planet and leaving him in this situation that he's in. And Spider-Man doesn't quite understand. You know, he's saying that Eddie and the symbiote are like an old married couple, always fighting with each other. And then we learn that there's no Eddie, it's the symbiote acting alone. And that's the cliffhanger for this issue. And, you know, just Ramos's treatment of the symbiote, it was the gold standard for me for a long time. You know, the detail he's putting into all of the strands coming off of him. It looks like it's moving constantly. And as I said before, that bone-like treatment of the Spider-Man emblem, the spider emblem on his back, I don't know, I just thought it was great. It just gave so much tangibility to this design of Venom. I'll be covering more comics from this era too, stuff I loved at this age. And, you know, like and subscribe and share this video. Tell your friends, and have a great day.